All right, I'm about to cut over it.
Okay.
There we go. Let me see if I can get my own picture up.
Welcome to the pod. Pod. The Irish Revolutionary, Irish Republican Army anime podcast. The Mujahideen
I think your audio is doubled up.
podcast.
Riley, for Christ's sake. I keep talking?
I'm talking. Am I still doubling up?
Yeah. Again?
Talking. Test.
There we go. I fixed it.
All right. Sound good now?
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to the Irish Revolutionary Army anime podcast.
Yeah, and Swedish.
Do you know who the Irish Revolutionary Army are?
No.
Oh, okay, then I won't spare you the details. Welcome to the podcast, everyone. And today we're just chatting about Bakemonogatari. Some say it's an anime. Some say it's a light novel. I say it's okay. We're really just talking about Hitagi Crab parts 1 and 2 for the most part, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so, the basic plot. Should we even go through a synopsis? Is it important? If people are listening to this or would listen to this,
I'd say so.
Okay.
So I'd also like to hear, because the show changes a lot as the story goes on. So I feel like your synopsis right now will give kind of an insight into your feelings and thoughts about the show.
Right. And so I get it. Yeah, no, I guess because I don't want it to make it sound skewed or anything. We're really only talking about part 1. We might talk about part 2 a little bit, but I haven't finished it yet.
Yeah.
But part 1 is Hitagi Crab. You've got the MC, former vampire, Koyomi Abaragi.
Yeah.
And
sort of former.
Okay, well, don't spoil it. We're talking about episodes 1 and 2 here.
No, I don't know.
I don't know.
You just forgot.
What do you mean, kind of? He's still, he's got some vampire powers, I guess, but they're remnants of his being a vampire.
Right, so yeah,
he's
get it. Yeah.
He can walk in the sunlight.
Yeah.
And then you've got Hitagi Senjogahara. That's such a hard name to say. Who is the subject of Hitagi Crab in terms of the one facing the conflict, really.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked. I like the stationary aspect of her kind of like character.
Yeah.
She uses stationary as weapons, and by stationary, the show means and I mean not just paper, but everything paper products, staplers, rulers,
byproducts.
Pens,
things you can buy at Office Depot.
Right, compasses, really like crazy things. And I really liked the scene where and they talk so fast in this show. They talk so insanely fast. It's really hard to keep up. It's almost like when I was watching it, I told Max, it's almost, and I'm Hank, by the way. We should have introduced ourselves at the very beginning. I'm Hank.
I'm Max.
And this is the anime podcast. But
the Scuff Anime Podcast.
They talk so fast when they're introducing themselves and they're meeting each other, and I guess throughout the whole series it's like a Quentin Tarantino movie where the dialogue is really dynamic and it just kind of flows out. Yeah,
and it's also like not a lot is going on in the scene other than to enhance what they're talking about or to just to represent what they're talking about, so you can focus on the talking. It's not too much.
But no, to that end, I think you make a good point, because to that end, what they're saying especially when he's talking to the class rep. What they're saying isn't really so important. There are obviously some key things to take away, but what's much more captured me a lot more in the first episode was really the imagery and the way that the direction was captured. Uh, I also really liked that opening scene. It takes place right after school. Araragi is speaking with his class representative, and it's twilight. You know, even if there was no color, even if there was no lighting to denote what time it was, you could tell it took place in the afternoon after school, because in the foreground they made sure that you saw the chairs stacked up on the desk.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's really a classic, easy, animation technique to save money and time by using a still for an extended period of time. But that didn't feel cheap. That didn't feel like a cheap way to save some money. It felt like it was creating a setting.
Yeah. And another thing I liked is that you can kind of tell how what they're talking about isn't really that important, just because the main character doesn't seem to care much about what they're talking about, or he's lost in thought. He's staring at his pen rather than actually like listening to what she's saying, or rather, maybe he's just
He's
kind of,
playing.
yeah, he's thinking
Well,
about what he
no,
wants to do rather than,
I think that's no. You said it exactly right. I think that, I mean, he's in another really cool animation technique. They actually have him playing with this pen in the foreground, and it is obstructing uh, the view, like his first person view of the class representative. And so I think it's very clearly denoting that he's not really interested in the conversation at hand. I think they're talking about, like, summer festival or something like that. Um, but that's more of a setting for the school, and him leading up to meeting with Senjo Gahara. Uh, and Senjo Gahara, uh, she's light.
which is like a really weird like
She's,
non superpower. It's just kind of a hindrance. It's more like a
well,
curse
it's
that
not
like
a
seems almost like a non-issue until she like later discusses like kind of the ramifications of it, and how like even though it's like not something you can like physically see, like it does like hinder the way she like even just like puts on clothes, because she's not just light, she's like um it's like you know crushing a piece of paper. She's fragile too, which
right,
kind
but
of comes with being like not dense, I guess.
and that's the literal take on it. I am always tempted to not take such a literal interpretation of things like this.
Well, I mean, we
Um,
can give the literal thing of what's happening in the show, and then switch
right,
over to
right, and
yeah,
I mean, she's literally very light, and I understand what you're saying. She's literally very light, and she has this actual hindrance. It's not really a power in a way you could think of it as such.
yeah,
Um, but in reality, and I think this is what you're getting at, is that it's a oh shoot, what is the word I'm thinking of? It's a stand-in. It symbolizes trauma, internalized trauma. You know,
well, the
to
opposite,
lose.
but yeah.
What do you mean the opposite?
I mean, it's the reason she feels light is because she made a wish that she no longer felt that way, and that the memories left her. Which is, I mean, maybe we should like wait until we get to that part. That's kind of at
Yeah,
the end.
yeah, because I don't agree with you actually at all.
I mean, she literally says in the
And
show, she says I
no,
wanted it gone, and like
no,
that.
I know what she said. I know what happened, but I'm not. I don't think it's as cut and dry and as simple as that. So
Hmm,
we'll get to that part when we get to it, because that is going to be the end of the second episode.
yeah,
Um, but ultimately, the reason she lost her weight is because a crab took it,
yeah,
and that's how they say it. A crab took her weight. It's very um, obscure imagery. It's like they're speaking literally of this crab as if it's a real thing, and it is a real thing in the show.
yeah.
Uh,
A god of some sort, or like a kind of god. I can't remember
Yeah,
what terminology they used
a,
exactly.
a heavy stone god,
Yeah.
or an kani,
Mm.
kani. Um, and so the heavy stone god manifests as a crab. I think he said it sometimes also manifests as a rabbit, if I remember correctly. Um, but it doesn't really matter what it is, because ultimately, and I guess to explain how she wants to gain her weight and regain her weight rather, and uh, confront the heavy crab, she has to meet uh, a man who helped Araragi, and that man
Yeah.
was, let me see, uh, Meme Oshino. Am I getting the character right? I'm pretty sure it's Meme Oshino.
Yeah.
And so Meme Oshino, he seems to be this clairvoyant, some kind of priest, some kind of like,
I mean, he's
uh,
just a specialty guy. His job is
yeah,
to yeah, is to solve these kinds of problems, or rather, help people solve their own problems.
yeah. And I mean, I think he really gets to and from what little I've seen, I feel like he really gets to the heart of the show, because, you know, I think it really uses a spiritual. It takes this stance that the spiritual is real. Of course, vampires are real because Araragi was bit by a vampire. He didn't make that up. He has bite marks on his neck. He still has the abilities, some of the abilities he had as a vampire. Um, things like healing quickly and things like that.
Yeah,
But that was a real thing that happened. Just like,
and we
uh,
we kind of see it at the beginning of the show too. We get like a
mhm,
kind of a short little montage of what looks to be like a shonen anime, like the
right,
entire season of a shonen anime.
like you see that little clip, and that's it.
Yeah, and then
It just gives a
do you remember
little
what it cuts
tiny.
to? Because I always forget what happens like right afterwards.
I probably don't remember what happens right
Uh,
afterwards.
it cuts to the main character like staring at the school rep. Like there's like a slowdown where he's like using his reactionary ability to like see a girl's skirt fly up and like
Oh,
look at her
right.
underpants.
Yeah. And, and and so that touches on, the some of the feelings I do have about this show, and we'll get to that as well. And I guess now we can start tackling it.
Yeah, I mean now's as good a time as any.
Yeah. So ultimately, Senjo Gahara, and Araragi, she cleans herself through what seems like a Shinto kind of ritual, and Meme Oshino takes on this kind of Shinto style garb and altar, and asks her to go through this ritual, asks both of them to go through this ritual to confront the heavy stone god, aka the crab. Um, and so they do this, and in doing this, we discover the reason why Senjo Gahara happened to lose the weight, because Meme Oshino indicates that most people who encounter a stone god or a heavy stone god or the crab, they don't lose their weight. But the specific reason she lost her weight was because she wanted to lose the weight, and not literally.
Yeah, metaphorically.
She, metaphorically, the weight that she lost comes from an incident, and I guess we need to kind of put a trigger warning because there's going to be mentions of assault. Um, but basically, she was assaulted by her mother's cult leader. Now, I don't want to. I just want to make this point because I feel like this is one of my complaints. I don't want to derail the conversation before we get to it. But this is something I think is what I was getting at before we went live, about what you say is equally as important as what you don't say, and vice versa.
Hmm.
Um, they make it really clear, and I think it's kind of a disturbing thing for them to even mention, and it's how I know a man wrote the show. They made it clear that she was assaulted, but there was no penetration. I don't think it really matters. It really doesn't, and I feel like the only purpose it serves is to allow them to keep Senjo Gahara in a virginal role. They want her to be virginal, for whatever reason. I think it's an anime thing.
It's a
That is
probably a
my
Japanese
perception.
thing.
Yeah,
I would
I think
say.
it could be. I think it could. I would imagine. I think similar things happen in American writing, but I think it's a specific phenomenon that happens in Japanese uh, 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 media, specifically anime and manga,
Hmm.
where you can play at the idea of this character being a tease or being like having these like sexually attractive aspects or whatever. But drawing a hard line, no, she does not date, or she does not like boys. It's kind of like the idol thing in Japan,
Yeah,
where you can have this idol who everyone idolizes, I guess, but she can't have a boyfriend. She can't be sexually active. That's a no-no.
yeah.
So we can get back on track. But she was assaulted, and she survived. Uh, but her desire to cut herself out of, or cut her mother altogether out of her life, and lose that relationship, and
And out of her
not even
out of her
consider
memories too.
out of her memories too. Well, I mean, and that is, that to me is the metaphor happening here. So the metaphor to me happening is internalized trauma. So this magical Kami, yeah, I guess it did allow her to actually forget about her family and forget about what happened, and she lost weight. I guess that literally happened in a sense. But if you want to examine that in a metaphorical context, she did not forget. In real life, you don't simply forget things like that. You might repress them. You might, not ever want to think about them, and they might just show themselves when you're just, your mind wanders or things like that. But you really don't forget things like that, and I don't think you would. But people who do repress things like that are trauma survivors,
Yeah,
and so that's why I say she uh, is a victim of internalizing uh, her feelings about the trauma she experienced, and just shutting it out, just locking it in this part of her brain and ignoring it.
yeah. And part of that
And
is because she thinks it's her fault. She thinks the whole situation, like her relationship with her mother, like the reason it didn't work out was because she didn't just you know let let the guy have his the cult leader have his way with her.
mhm,
She like wants so badly to like have a good relationship with her mother, that she's willing to. She feels guilt. She feels regret that that's something that was like not her fault, obviously.
right,
That's just
she
another common
chose,
thing with trauma victims, or yeah,
yeah,
victims of rape too,
she
is that they often think
she,
that they
she
blame themselves.
yeah, she survived. She chose survival. Um, and the fallout uh caused her to you know have this self doubt, and this self blame toward the events that happen. Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. Um,
But yeah, and so she has this revelation, and so clearly at this point, the spiritual in the show, the supernatural, is a means to convey the reality, um, and the reality of the emotions happening, and so I do like that aspect of it, and I like how instead of hinting at things like just like you're saying, they're real. These are real things that have real consequences, and she confronts the crab. Uh,
and
I
real
pretty
quick,
much knew. Oh, go ahead.
just like another thing I thought like was interesting is that like um the she like had this memory, like she chose to like forget about all, quote unquote forget about it, um but because she did, like uh she was never able to get past it, so she has this thing, the losing the weight, that's just constantly following her everywhere, and it's like affecting every single aspect of her life,
Mm-hmm.
similar to like somebody who's going through trauma, and like instead of trying to work through it, they like just choose to ignore it, and just forget it ever
Right,
happened.
right, and the take is interesting because I think and I don't know if this is also cultural, but I think, in Western culture we see that kind of thing as baggage.
Yeah.
Um, Linguistically, that has the implication that there is weight there, and weight, gravity, uh, those have meanings outside of physical weight and physical gravity.
Yeah.
You actions can have gravity. Circumstances can have gravity, and so yeah, I totally agree. Where it's like it's just it's an inverse to what might be expected. Her symptoms, but it meets the same goal. It meets that same end where you're still we're still talking about this internalized trauma, this internalized feelings and memories that are represented by the lack of weight. Uh, yeah, are you ready to talk about her confronting the crab now?
Um, I feel like
Anything
it's
else to say
difficult
about the?
to. I really wanted to talk about the architecture
Oh, yeah, talk about the architecture of what?
of
The
everything
impossible architecture,
of the school.
impossible architecture of the school.
Yeah, and I just think that like that's one of the things that a lot of um, I feel like a lot of anime and a lot of like cartoons like don't play with the kind of with like different architecture to like theme um their scenes and like every moment, and even the kind of gritty weird like abandoned building that like she's taken to, or they go to where Mei Mei is. I just think it's really cool, and like you slowly like there's more like signs and more like gates and more uh I don't know. I just find it really interesting that they put that much effort into it, which is something you usually kind of just take as like
Yeah,
a setting.
yeah, and I think that's a really good point. And when I look back and I think about settings and the backgrounds, that's true because you look at a lot of anime and the settings. It's almost like you might as well take a picture of a street in Japan or like a couple of
And they do.
uh, and just trace it. Yeah, but this is a lot different. Like in that opening, it is the very opening scene of Hitagi Crab Part One, where Senjo Gahara is falling and Araragi catches her. And while she's falling down this spiral staircase with stairs that are unsupported. So it's almost like this big citadel kind of thing with these stairs circling around these glass windows. And you're watching Araragi run up these stairs to catch her. And I mean, this is a Japanese high school. It's very clear. It's very obviously like not, or it's not that it's not real. It's impossible.
Yeah,
The architecture presented is not possible
and it
physically
goes up
in
so many floors. Like the staircase
right.
goes up at least like 40 floors, and I actually have an image on the screen right now, of the of this like glass like tower going nowhere. There's like if you look at the top, there's like
Right.
nothing happening at the top there. It's almost like falling into like a rabbit hole, like Alice in Wonderland kind of thing.
Right. And maybe that is the point. Maybe it is supposed to be kind of an Alice in Wonderland style thing. I think that's a good eye,
Yeah,
because it likely is that kind of illusion with an A, illusion. Uh, you're falling into this, new world, so to speak, and you don't know the rules yet. And so it kind of does have that Alice in Wonderland thing going on with it.
yeah, and
And it had
there's
the
definitely some sort of like holy kind of look to it with like the light shining down, or like light representing like an angelic sort of thing. I don't
yeah.
know how far that goes, other than it's just like a really like beautiful girl coming out of nowhere after slipping on a banana.
Right, and I don't, and then the fact that she slipped on a banana, and they make several mentions that like she slipped on a banana.
Yeah,
I just think that's really really silly.
yeah, and I think that's
And
another like interesting thing about the writing is that there's like a lot of really heavy themes going on, uh, but at the same
but
time, there's like tons of witty writing and jokes like thrown in that don't feel out of place. I just feel like kind of the conversations you might have with like someone you just met, you know,
Right.
especially with somebody with like a really um, with a lot of weight or
Someone who's not necessarily letting their guard down.
yeah, exactly. She's like I hate to call her like a tsundere just because of like the connotation, but like
She
just like
calls herself Tsundere at some
yeah,
point.
yeah, and I think that I feel like that was a smart thing to do is to just like say it out loud, uh, and like he even like kind of like disagrees with her because dere would imply like she's got like some sort of like you know cute kind side,
Complex.
yeah,
Right.
but he just kind of sees her as a
So, did we actually see Senjogahara slip on the banana peel?
no, we see her like suddenly fall. At one point,
So,
there's like one frame of the banana peel.
okay,
Uh,
okay. So I wanted to know if there was any visualization at all because something I had thought about for a while after this part, after the Hitagi crab, was the possibility that there was no banana peel, and she threw herself off the top of the stairs.
oh, interesting.
That was one interpretation I had. Um, if
Yeah,
they showed a banana, they talked about the banana a lot. If they really want to make that, a plot piece, I think that's fine. If they wanted to make it clear, hey, she didn't try to kill herself. But that's kind of how I read it.
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's one of those things where like I hear you say that, and I want to
Yeah, I
I
want to
want to
make the
take that
connection.
interpretation because it's fitting and it adds more. I'm gonna keep doing this, but excuse the pun. It adds more weight to the situation, and especially like at the
Right.
when you're first introduced into the character, like to think of it just as like kind of a slapstick kind of
Excuse
situation.
excuse me, excuse me for the tangent and for interrupting you, but it just makes me think. It's like it's this dramatically ironic situation almost where what happened to Senjogahara is not a joke.
Yeah,
Her feelings about what happened is not a joke. Her actions accounting for what happened are not a joke. But the fact that all of that could happen and she just slips on a banana peel and falls down this very dramatic set of stairs,
yeah,
you know, like the setup is indicating one thing, but once they start talking about exactly what happened, oh, there was a banana and she slipped on it, blah blah blah. It kind of like, oh, the that's what happened. It pretty much lines it up exactly to let you know. I almost wish they said nothing because then it could have been nothing. But
yeah.
I don't really understand why or if. I'm
I
sorry
mean,
we're talking about the banana peel so much.
I mean, it is what it is. Like what we want to talk about is what we want to talk about. And
Right.
I also do want to talk about the banana peel. Um, wait, what was I gonna say? The uh, I think it might have been. I don't know. I'm starting to second guess myself if they show it, but like there definitely was like kind of a funny scene, um, where uh, the main character. I always forget his name. What's his name? You there, Hank?
You hear me?
Oh yeah, I think you cut out for a second.
Okay, that's fine. I don't know how I cut out. Yeah, I actually just got an email about a job offer. Um,
Nice.
yeah. So yeah, and going back to the banana. I'm sorry. What was the very last thing you said?
I was just trying to remember the main character's name, but like there was a scene where like
Oh yeah,
he
Araragi.
like
Araragi and the class rep are like, "Oh, you don't eat banana peels, or do you eat bananas, or something like
yeah,
that."
yeah, yeah. Don't ever eat a banana on campus again. Do you like
Right.
bananas? And she's like, I guess. I mean, they're healthy. Like, I guess I would say I'd
She's
like
like,
them.
I
He's like, don't ever eat a
if it's
banana on
between
campus again.
if I remember the way she says it is good because it's like if it's between eating a banana and not eating one, I guess I'll eat one.
I don't know. Is it worth it? Do you think that that joke was it potentially being the only reason they?
Well, that's why I question the entire premise of the banana at all.
Yeah.
It's like it means nothing. If she just slipped on a banana, it means nothing. And maybe it's trying to say something about the randomness of the universe.
Yeah, I was about to
Maybe it's
say that
trying to say
earlier.
maybe it's trying to say something about, the concept of destiny. It,
It
it
might
could
even
be
be like
anything
a
like that.
parody of like anime, like meetings, like first meetings, in anime, and how like running into each other with like the bread in the mouth, uh,
Ah, yeah,
could
like a
be like
cute meat
so
kind of,
cartoonish.
right? Like the cute meat thing is already um so forced or so, set up
Yeah,
that
to go to
that
such an extreme that like,
yeah, it's like it's putting it in your face, and maybe almost to that end, maybe it's like a red herring. Maybe like they want you to think about the banana too much.
or maybe it's just us. Maybe we
It's
just
like
like thinking
it's like
about the banana. The
if in the future,
ramifications of the banana.
I hope
What
one
does
day
it
in the
mean?
future
What does it mean?
there's like there's like automatic software that will be able to like translate any audio into any other language or whatever. And so maybe one day some of the staff of Bakemonogatari will stumble upon this and be able to listen to it and respond to us and let us know, hey, the banana is just a banana.
But even then, I guess it's, you know it's kind of a cliche thing to say, but like, if we believe there's a meaning behind the banana, there is a meaning behind the banana because
Yeah,
it's in the show, and uh, like whether or not it was put there to be interpreted, you know, we
it will
can
be
do so.
interpreted.
Yeah,
Right. It's subject to interpretation regardless of whether or not they
yeah.
intended for it to be interpreted.
The death of the author and so on.
Right, exactly. But yeah, getting back to the actual story and no longer talking about bananas. So after we learn all this about Senjikahara, her assault, her survival ship, her trauma, she confronts the crab, and the first thing the crab does is fucking just charge her.
Yeah,
The
because she
crab just fucking
hesitates.
like charges her. Yeah, she hesitates because the I think I was interested in Meme's description of how gods are. They're pretty lax. They'll help a person in despair, but they're also not trite. They're not going to put up with
The
basically insubordination or what perceived disrespect.
I think like it kind of just comes down to they don't care. Like, so they'll help somebody in
Right,
need just because they can, and uh at the same time, uh like they don't want like their time taken up. They don't want like to have to do with anything, like, because they don't really care about the situation. So if you're like
right.
wasting their time, I guess they kind of see that as, I don't know, as a
Well,
it just pisses them
it's all
off.
it's all they have, and in a way, it's all any of us have is time.
Yeah.
No, so I mean, I don't know if that says anything about the mortality of Akami or whatever, but you know, she gets pinned, she gets tackled, and then she does what was expected the whole time, and she prostrates to the god and uh, formally asks for her weight back.
Yeah. I mean that,
And
and it's also like her hesitation to, like, say it out loud is also her hesitation of, like, is it really going to be worth it? Like,
mhm,
knowing how much pain like all these things put her through.
right,
Is it gonna be worth having all these memories back? Like, I feel like anybody would hesitate when, like, all of a sudden, like, the thing that they wanted for so long, um, they, like, they're only thinking about uh how it's like currently affecting them, and then when they finally like getting ready to solve the problem, anybody would hesitate because they all of a sudden they have to think about like what comes after that.
right, right, and yeah, then that's a real decision she has to make, and ultimately she makes it, and she opts to have her weight back, and I guess in doing so accepting the burden of trauma of survivorship. And uh yeah, I feel like that's pretty much what happens in part two, right? Um. Oh no, that's not all that happens because she gains her weight back, uh, and her memories and all of this. But uh, the heavy stone god is a generous one because he not only gave Senjo Gahara her weight back, he gave Araragi the exact same amount of weight, and he didn't lose any weight.
Now he's a heavy boy.
So he went from like 100 kilograms or something to 200 kilograms.
Yeah.
So he weighs like 230 pounds or something like that. He weighs like a defensive lineman in football,
Yeah.
American football.
He's sturdier now.
And I like that. And according to Max, they never, that's there. That's an attribute he has going forward.
Like, do you want me to spoil like kind of one of the things that they like one of the references they had back to it?
Sure, I'm fine with that. I'll probably forget.
He his sister like offers to like give him like his sister's like a athlete, and offers to give Aragi what would you call it, like a shoulder ride, like have
like a piggyback ride.
Yeah, and like once he gets on the on her shoulders, like she all of a sudden was just like, holy shit. and the entire time you can like see it in her face that she's like in so much pain because she did not expect him to weigh that much. I don't know if she ever actually like says it, but like it is definitely like she's like really shocked at how heavy he is because he is like a petite Japanese teenager.
Well, that's the beautiful thing about animation. You don't have to say any of it. If they do it the same well, then she'll walk like she has more weight on her. She'll express like she has more weight on her. She'll move like she has more weight on her.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the beauty. You don't have to say it out loud. If you've seen it.
Yeah. I guess another. I do want to kind of talk about the. I guess we're going backwards now, but I want to talk about the changing scene.
Oh yeah, I don't really have a whole lot to say there, but go ahead if you have any.
Well, I mean, I think it does like initially come off as like kind of a almost fan service situation at first, and you can like kind of see it on Aragi's face. He's all blushing and like nervous about it. And like I think one of the things I find interesting is like the way that at the beginning there's a lot of like I guess I would say sexually grotesque shots of like like her showering and her like putting on clothes and taking them off and stuff like that, and like Aragi is kind of seeing it as like her just being like, I don't know how to put it, like overly flirty, but like rather like teasing him, I guess I would say. And then there's a moment where he like confronts her about it, and like he says like, oh, like what are you doing? Why don't you just like pick some clothes, so we can like get on with it? And then that's when she says that like heavy clothes hurt her, and like that, like she's like not able to do it, so the reason she's like struggling to put on clothes is to find something that like doesn't put her in constant pain. And then after that moment, those kind of like grotesque sexual shots, they stop. From then on, it's kind of framed in a way where they're just having a normal conversation, because Aragi kind of realizes that he misread the situation. They even like use the architecture to like kind of block out her titties and her ass.
But no, that's good insight, because that's
you kind of forget about it too.
I took away from it. I didn't really take that away from it as much, but when you sit and explain, see, and I guess ultimately that is my main complaint with part one, at least, is the way it treats its female character. It's not always fair. It's not always honest. and I just think it could have been better. I think they did a great job, all things considered. I think the story is very good. I really loved Hitagi Crab and the story it tells.
Yeah.
I think they made a few missteps in how they chose to represent female protagonist. I think that's really common in anime, so it's hard to be like, oh, this is just for this anime, so because it's not.
Yeah.
Um, but I did like it.
That's
I did like it, and it wasn't just like vulgarity the entire time or anything
well,
like that. It wasn't
yeah.
just like fan service.
Well, I think what's interesting is that I think that the way the story is told and the way the message is kind of getting across, um, it creates a sense of trust with the director, with the author, the writers, that I wouldn't normally give a scene like that. You know what I mean? Like I see a scene like that in any other show, I would just kind of jump to the conclusion that it's just like fan service. But because like some of the writing can get so good, and like it seems like the themes are in the right place, and like there's a lot of thought put into the writing, and like how um, every other scene is like set up. I watched that scene again, and I just start to think. I start to think like, what is okay? So what are they trying to say here? Just because like you know I have a sense of trust with them more, because in other parts it's it's not like that. You know what I mean?
Hmm. I do. Well, I understand to the extent I've only seen the next part, the first episode of the next part.
Yeah.
Um,
And I guess I'm gonna eat my words eventually. Because as much as I feel that way, especially like through most of Bakemonogatari, um, there are some parts where I just cannot come up with like anything. Like it doesn't feel like that's. I feel like maybe there's a cultural barrier. You know what I
to
mean? Just the
to
way like the characters are sexualized, and
Yeah, yeah, and I think that is a reality, of the medium, especially when you go back to like mid, early mid, late 2000s, back further than that. But
yeah,
it's an unfortunate circumstance because I feel like the culture, and I feel like this goes for a lot of culture, not just Japanese culture. So because I'm not just trying to shit on Japanese culture and Japanese
a great
media,
Nippons.
but glorious Nippon. Um, yeah, I mean, I just wish that you could have a female character who has real experiences, and there are anime that do this, but that has real experiences that aren't filtered through this weird lens of what's acceptable for a young woman or what's not, or what would make merchandise of this character sell, because that's really the reason. I'm going to be very, very cynical about that. Selling merchandise is the reason anime exists. Uh, and so I don't necessarily think there are a bunch of Senjo Gahara, uh, uh, body pillows out there or anything like that. But when you have characters who are sexualized despite or regardless of their experiences, uh, then that's just kind of what happens. It's commercialized.
Yeah, I guess I wanted to maybe clarify, because I don't want to take too much of a nihilist standpoint. But the reason the anime is able to be made is so that they can sell things.
Right.
Not the reason like the writer or like the directors want to make the thing, but the reason like it gets
Exactly.
funded to be made. I
Right. And so the I don't mean to cut
That's
you
not
off,
always
but
true,
the
obviously.
right, but then I think what ends up happening a lot of the time, I think maybe a writer or a director wants to depict a character a certain way, but somebody over them probably steps in and says, "Hey, we want this character to be this way." And if your boss comes down and tells you to change something, and they can just as easily find another animator or another director or another writer who would do that, unfortunately, you're going to do that.
Yeah.
So, and that's what it means, to be
But
more of a cultural
and when
issue.
and you can't necessarily say that everything is compromised in that way. Uh, I know a lot of things. For instance, we wouldn't have Demon Souls if like Miyazaki didn't like literally ignore like everything the higher up said and lied about what he was doing. It wouldn't be
Right, but
made. There's
on that same merit, we wouldn't have Dragon Ball if Akira Toriyama didn't listen to his editor, because he would have been fired.
yeah,
So I recognize what you're saying. Sometimes creators have uh, the liberty of being much more free, but ultimately, when you have a big company who is producing something, smaller companies often, they do want to make things that are more artful or more meaningful. Big companies want things to be commercially successful,
yeah,
and that's the difference. I think in anime, uh, the cliched example here is Sunrise. So if the audience don't know, Sunrise is the animation studio which produces Gundam. They produce a ton of anime. They just produce a massive amount of anime, Sunrise. Um, and the reason that robot anime, mecha, was so popular for, from the 60s to the 90s practically, is because it was predominantly used to sell toys. That's like the classic example. And the way um, I'm going to forget his name. The man who created Gundam. I'm not stalling to look up his name or anything, because the
mm-hmm.
man who invented Gundam,
And his
who
name
and his name
is
is uh, uh, Yoshiyuki Tomino.
yes,
Sorry. Um, Tomino had this idea for instead of a super robot, which is powered by something like love or friendship or courage and can do impossible things. He created a giant robot that exists within, you know, the parameters and the logic of this universe, the Gundam universe, and he made a more realistic, giant robot. And so uh, from there we get Gunpla, and it was hugely successful. But Gundam has a lot to say. Gundam has a ton to say. Gundam, the original Gundam, is highly, philosophical. It's really deep, because he was making basically a gratuitous toy commercial.
yeah,
He could pivot that and use that to get into some really, really deep subjects, and it only gets deeper with the Tomino uh, Gundam series. The other Gundam series are not as strong, in my opinion, but he's an example of somebody who took his situation and really did use it to express, an artistic vision. And I think Tomino is one of the people who accomplishes that. And obviously, I think Bakemonogatari is accomplishing that based on what I've seen so far.
mm,
Um, but it's obviously Bakemonogatari is not commercialized to the extent Gundam is commercialized. So I'm not trying to make a one-to-one
yeah.
comparison or anything.
I mean, it
But
was definitely like when Bakemonogatari like was airing, it was like heavily like everyone was talking about it, to the point where like it's kind of one of those things where you see all these things outside of context and like you're just like, oh, this is a harem anime. And I'm not interested.
right.
That is something that I actually wanted to talk about. I guess I left it out of my notes, um, but that um, outside looking in and like the way the memes are spread and some of the more like risque moments and some of the like the goofier moments with like girls and stuff, and this like one like plain looking guy, like I immediately like kind of wrote it off. um I guess it wasn't until like I kind of heard someone talk about it on a podcast that I was just like, this is what they were talking about, like this like harem anime.
Yeah,
uh,
and it's funny how you can have, like, your first impressions can really kind of give you an expectation for what you're gonna get.
yeah,
Yeah, like I think when I started Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya,
yeah,
back in like 2008, I didn't know anything about what it would be about. I just knew it was this anime people kept talking about, and it was so popular. And I'm like, I guess I'll check it out. I mean, it seems kind of generic, and it's like not at all what you think it's about. Like,
Yeah.
if you just look at it, it's not what you think it's about if you just look at it.
Yeah.
And like I think Haruhi Suzumiya is like honestly a really bad example if you're going to talk about anime used for commercials. No, it's not a bad example because of course there's a ton of Haruhi Suzumiya
Yeah.
merchandise, but
Evangelion, I guess, would be a perfect example.
Evangelion is there's more Evangelion merchandise probably than
Yeah, and I
any
think
other.
people who like think like who are like seeing like so much of Evangelion and like even probably heard people talk about like, oh, it's not like this and not like that, like this kind of stuff happens. I think even those people going into Evangelion are probably end up surprised as to like what happens in that show.
Oh no, for sure. Because I
Yeah.
remember watching the first couple episodes on like Toonami as a kid, and I don't think I ever watched like the last few episodes as a kid.
Yeah.
But when I watched it as a teenager, it's and you watch the whole thing all the way through. It's like whoa.
Yeah.
And obviously they're making Gainax is my favorite studio of all time probably, and Gainax has
Old guy next to you,
old Gainax. Yeah, thank you for clarifying. Gainax has like one of the weirdest dynamics. Old Gainax because they sometimes they'll make things that are not commercial at all. They started as a bunch of guys um, in a basement making a zine, basically, and they evolved into probably the most legendary animation studio out of Japan.
Yeah.
And like Gunbuster or the is it the Otakon videos like Otakon 4 and 5. Um, shoot, what else is an early Gainax thing? They've made so much good stuff and so little of it until Gundam was commercialized. At no, they did it for the love of it.
Yeah.
Otaku no Video 4 and 5. Excuse me. That was the little two little OVAs they made that were basically like I guess you could call them kind of a proto Ready Player One.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that makes Gainax stand out is that like they didn't go into it to like see if they could get a deal with like a manga and um, uh, animate a manga or animate a light novel that's already been written and try and do something with that. They wanted to make original things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
That's what the
and
biggest thing that makes I can hardly when I think of an anime that's original, like I can really only think of Gainax.
I
I know
think of
there's other
Gainax
things, but
first. Yeah, I think of Gainax first. But I mean, going back to Sunrise, they produced a lot of original stuff um, that wasn't a manga before. Uh, there are a few studios who are willing to really take something and just kind of make it from the ground up. I
yeah,
get what you're saying,
yeah,
and
a story
and
written for or like it's written to be animated.
yes, that's a good way of putting it. It's written to be an anime,
Yeah,
and just on that note, and I'm sorry to kind of backtrack to Tomino again, but I also just want to mention Space Runaway Ideon, Ideon, because that is something that is really the proto Evangelion. If you've never heard of it, I can't really recommend watching it only because it was made before Gundam, 1980, and it is well, no, I'm sorry, it was made just after Gundam next year, I believe, and it is like 39 episodes, so it's kind of long. It's old, so it's not really the best animated thing ever. Gundam meets Evangelion, and I mean that. I mean that in every single way you could possibly imagine. I mean it in every single way that you can imagine. And you do not know, if you don't know what Ideon is, you do not know where it goes. You will not know where it goes. You just need to see it. If you're interested in old anime, if you have the patience to watch old anime and find it, you should watch Space Runaway Ideon, because I really think it is.
Making a hard sell.
You know, and it's not. They did commercialize it. It was absolutely 100% not made to appeal to any child on this earth.
Yeah.
And I'll take that to the bank.
I guess that's easy to say something that about something that you love so much.
I don't really love it so much.
Yeah.
I think you will not like, if any person chooses to watch Ideon, they will not like Ideon until they finish the series and watch the movie. You have to see the entire thing
Yeah.
and look at the whole thing to really get it. I don't want to say anything about how it will make you feel. I don't want to say anything about what happens. You shouldn't even Google it, because you'll immediately find out the whole thing.
Yeah.
So just if you can find it, if you can try to find it, I recommend it. It's really cool, and yeah, if you like Gundam, if you like robots, Space Runaway, yeah.
Yeah, dude, check it out.
It's also got a great opening and ending.
Yeah. Speaking of openings and endings, uh, when part 2 starts, when the second arc of the, or I guess I don't even know what to call it. Like Bakemonogatari set up, or the Monogatari series as a whole is set up so strange that like what's considered an arc is kind of, I guess it is a story arc, but maybe not an arc in the traditional sense of like the anime, the way it's used in anime.
Yeah, on the notes I have here, episode 3, which is the next part, episodes 1 and 2 are that Hitagi crab. Episode 3 is arc is Mayoi snail.
Mm-hmm. And we see kind of, I guess, is that you don't really know much about like what the story is or what the yokai is in the second part, right?
I don't know. I've only seen episode 3, so I don't
Yeah,
know
I'm just trying to
how.
remember like how far that, or like what they go into.
Yeah, in episode 3, most of the episode is Araragi and Senjugahara just sitting, and it's that cinematographer's wet dream.
Yeah.
Like half the episode is them sitting on like a jungle gym, and all these different shots again of like this weirdly impossible architecture of this playground
Well,
that
before we go
seems
into
to
that, I do want to
oh
talk
yeah.
about like the opening. Like that's what I was kind of leading into.
Oh
Is
yeah,
that
the
like,
opening changes.
yeah, it's completely different, and like it's a character that you've like never seen before, um, and like
And when we talk about openings and endings, we're talking about opening theme songs, intros, and ending theme songs, credits.
yeah, I have a little clip of the of the intro, and in the background you can actually see a picture, a still from the outro or
Oh,
the
cool.
ending. Uh, but I just, this is like where I kind of fell in love with Bakemonogatari. Like I loved the way that that the story was told in the first part. Uh, but like when the second part like had this whole new like opening, I knew that this was gonna be something like unique, something like special. And maybe that's not an impression that everyone got, but like I don't know, it just completely like reframed how I saw the rest of the show going. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah, and
I feel like anybody watches the first 2 episodes starts kind of thinking of about where the anime is going. Like these two people like meet for the first time, and like one helps the other person's problem, and now they're will they, won't they, kind of thing. And like you could just kind of see it like going in that kind of shonen direction, but like I don't know, this opening just like completely changed, like just like had me like reset to default.
yeah, and I think that's it. The opening especially does a really good job of kind of like putting your guard down, because we just got through part 1, which has got some pretty heavy content, and it ends on a comical note, so it's not like it's all doom and gloom. But then you totally shift gears. Episode 3's opening is totally different, and like has a
It's super
totally different
cutesy.
tone. right, and you're not sure exactly what you're about to watch,
Yeah.
and even once you get into the first episode, it's not exactly clear how the opening links into what's happening.
Yeah.
Um,
We do know. I mean, we know, having like watched it over, from, we know the title of the episode. I don't know if it's shown in the actual episode. Like, if somebody were to
I'm
watch it on
not either,
TV,
but
but you know
thinking
that.
about it now, it's obvious why she's a snail
Yeah, with their
because
big backpack.
the she has the big backpack, and the character's name um is, did they give her a name? I don't know if they gave her a name. Yeah, I didn't write anything down for a name, so I don't think they gave her a name yet. Uh,
Yeah,
but
I think her name is
the
Mayoi, something like that. Uh,
Mayoi,
yeah, Mayoi, yeah.
Mayoi, it's either Mayoi or Mayoi. Okay, I'd have to see it in
Yeah.
Japanese to know the exact pronunciation.
Oh,
Oh wait, no, it's right there.
Mayoi. Mayoi.
Mayoi. Yeah, that's it. Mayoi. I'm looking at it now.
My American tongue
And so
doesn't. It's not accustomed to these kinds of.
the E, the E is hard. The E sound.
Yeah, but especially pressed up against another y, like Mayoi.
Yeah.
Mayoi.
Well, and that's why, like, when you say, like, it's not Sasuke, it's Sasuke. That's why it's like the it's almost like a gap. It's a weird. We got to stop talking about it because I'm getting flashbacks to comparative grammar in college, and that's bad. Anyway, yeah, and she's obvious. And again, I think the knowing that it's Mayoi snail at this point might spoil it just a tiny bit.
It doesn't.
Okay, but there's this little girl. She has a big backpack, and after Araragi and Senjogahara have this long conversation about maybe being boyfriend and girlfriend, or if they want a boyfriend or girlfriend, and they're kind of teasing about it. I think Araragi just gets done with it, and he beats the shit out of this child. He beats the ever loving, and I'm not kidding. This is happening in the anime. He beats the crap out of this child. He tries to help her, and she doesn't want any help. She just kind of makes fun of him.
Do you really want to skip ahead all the way to the?
Yeah, because
the
content of the conversation, unless you have something to say about the conversation between Araragi and Senjogahara, I really don't. They were just talking about, like, oh, should we have a relationship? Ooh, I kind of want a boyfriend. Oh.
Yeah, it does go deeper than that, I think.
Okay, I didn't take a lot away from that scene, and it's hard for me to really care about the interpersonal relationship when I already feel a certain way about the relationship with the characters, so that's my own bias.
It might be different now that I've watched it all the way through, and they do hint at it in their first episode, so it's not really a spoiler. And obviously you do know, like, that, like, she has trust issues, and she's that's kind of where tsundere, like, personality comes from. And the entire scene they're kind of playing on, well, she basically tells him that, like, because he helped her, that he'll do anything for him. And it's almost kind of like the entire conversation is kind of a test, because Aragi is a very plain, like, he doesn't, like, put much thought, like, he just says what he means, like, he feels what he feels, and, like, doesn't really think beyond that. And he's also kind of reserved when, like, inferring himself into, like, somebody else's, like, the way they feel. And so you see the scene where she's kind of, I mean, basically, like, she wants to be in a, like, she wants to be, like, friends, and maybe more than friends with him, obviously. And she's just kind of, like, trying to tease it out of him, because she's afraid to say it herself. She's just afraid to feel, to let her guard down. So she wants, like, she wants it to come out of him. She wants, like, she's using this wish thing to kind of get him to, like, want something from her, so that they can have, like, whatever that relationship is, a sort of relationship. And she's...
Women, am I right, fellas? Am I right, fellas?
Abused women, am I right? Women who've gone through trauma. Oh my gosh. They
Don't
don't trust
extrapolate the wrong thing out of what I'm
anyone.
saying. Don't extrapolate the wrong thing out of what I'm saying.
I'm just joking.
Well, there's joke, and then there's blasting me for victim blaming on a stream. So
Oh, that's not what I
let's
meant.
draw the line in the sand somewhere.
But yeah, and I think the most interesting. I mean, that's when you put it plainly, it is like exactly what you said. Uh, but I think it gives their relationship a unique dynamic, and at the same time, it's emphasized by they're playing around in this like really weird playground, and they're always on like different things that put each other above one another. Where like she's leading him, and they're on a teeter totter. She's ahead of him on this like car ride sort of thing. He's above her on this like um, jungle gym kind of thing, and it's physically showing the power struggle of the conversation between two like socially inept weirdos.
Or maybe better put, between two children.
Yeah, yeah. Pun intended, I'm guessing.
Well, I
Um,
mean, that's what they are. It's not that they're two socially inept people, it's that they're two children.
just because they're on the playground.
Yeah, but I mean, they're
Yeah,
also just children. They haven't had, enough experience to know, how to go about talking about entering a relationship, or,
yeah,
the social nuance of that.
and
That's
they are
something
both.
I always think about when I look at like the high school aspect, is if it's too easy, if it comes too naturally,
Yeah,
they're not playing a very convincing, teenager.
I feel like that's like really well exemplified when she like teases him about like being a virgin, and like he's kind of embarrassed about it, but he doesn't deny it. He like knows he's a virgin. Like he like
Right.
he's not dishonest about it. And then immediately after he asks her, he's like, well, it's not like you have any experience, and she says, oh, I have plenty of experience, which is a total lie. And
Right.
that kind of it's like a perfect like crystallization of like the dynamic. And immediately afterwards, she's like, actually, I was lying. Like I am a virgin, which is a moment of weakness. And she immediately kind of snaps back at him by saying like, uh, that's why I would waste some time on a loser like you. It's because I'm a virgin. And kind of taking the power back.
I think she actually says something, and you're right, but I think it's funnier the way she says it, because it's
Oh
something
yeah, she says it perfectly. There's no way I could.
that's the only reason I would even spend time with a
Yeah.
virgin like you, like something like really mean and cutting like that.
Yeah. And I just love that. I love this whole scene, and it feels like even though it's obviously like exaggerated, and like it is a narrative. It's meant to tell a story. It's not like totally realistic, but you feel a real relationship building, even if it's like kind of weird as the way they go about it. But their personality like shines through, and I just think it's a great way to, because in the first two episodes you don't really get that much relationship building between them, because it's very goal oriented. So I think it's really cool to have this scene of just them talking and building a relationship. So I wouldn't say that the scene is like pointless or
No, and I mean, no, I feel like I'm being put to shame, because you made it very clear that the scene is not pointless. But I don't know. I think my perspective on kind of relationship stuff in an anime is a little different, just because it just seems so pedantic to me. It just
yeah,
seems so just like, oh
you
my
can become
god, can you
jaded.
like move on? Yeah.
I think it
Um.
comes back to kind of my trust with the writers and the director of the anime, where this scene, like in another anime, I could see myself feeling that way, but just because I kind of I have a trust with them, I'm willing to kind of see past that and see what they're actually trying to do. And it's a really beautiful scene on this like really wild playground, and
Yeah, it's another one of these like impossible geometry kind of things. There's like
yeah,
more jungle gym stuff than there would actually feasibly be space for in this.
and all the playgrounds are um, or all the playground equipment is like has almost like no like shading to it, so it seems like very surreal.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but yeah, I love that scene. Uh, yeah. So now we can maybe move on to the to what you wanted to get into.
Oh, well, I already said what I wanted to get into. Araragi beat the crap out of this girl,
Yeah, yeah,
this child, and that's it.
yeah. Uh,
That's it. That's the whole series. I don't understand why it happened. I don't.
yeah, I
Yeah.
guess it's. I'm trying to think of like how much I can really like. I'm trying to think of like where the episode ends. Like the whole like second, all the parts kind of blend together for me, just because they are like a cohesive story. Uh, so it's hard to think about. Uh, but yeah, he. I mean, you don't want to. He did a really good job at summarizing the first two episodes. Are you sure you don't want to actually summarize what happens?
What in episode 3?
Yeah,
Well, I mean, in episode 3, I'm trying to think. They have the relationship information, the relationship talk. The reason Araragi is actually uh, confronting the little girl is because she's obviously, or appears to be obviously, lost. She's looking at a little piece of paper, and then she's looking at this map, and based on her body language, she clearly needs help finding this place. But and he
yeah,
wants to help her, but she refuses his help. Uh, it escalates basically to the
yeah.
point where
Well,
they start fighting,
do you
and
remember
he
why
actually,
Aragi's at the playground?
because it's Mother's Day.
Yeah, and he doesn't want to be home because he like I don't know, has a weird thing about Mother's Day and
Yeah,
had a fight with his sisters. Uh,
yeah.
so like
I'm not.
I feel like a combination of Aragi like just being a generally helpful person, but at the same time like he sees this little girl being lost as a way to kind of uh, it gives him a reason not to go home, and that's why he's maybe so forceful about it.
Oh,
To a
yeah,
comedic
that's a good
sense.
point.
Yeah, he's
Hmm.
like,
There's a reason he is so determined to help this girl find her way home
yeah, he
because
sees this
it's better
opening,
than
and then
going home.
yeah, he sees this opening of something that like he can like oh, I was helping this little girl find her way home. He's like, oh, I could totally kill some time with this, and then he's immediately denied. uh,
And I mean, I don't know if the culture. I'm sure the culture in Japan is a little different regarding this, but I mean, in the United States, if you saw a little girl, you if you saw a little girl standing by herself, that would probably immediately in the United States be immediate concern,
yeah,
and you'd probably want to call the police.
yeah,
But if you see it in Japan, I guess it's a little different
yeah.
because
A lot of like kids will like go to school on their own because crime rate is so low. They take the
right.
subway, go to their school on their own.
So there's almost this weird like cultural thing where it's like it seems a little creepy, from an American
Yeah,
perspective when he's like
yeah,
approaching this little girl and like seeing if she needs help. Um, but I don't think that's implied at all, or I don't think that's intended to any
yeah.
you know
And then
degree.
I guess the way the episode leaves off is uh I guess the like she's Mayoi Mayoi Mayoi
Really,
is kind of like uh even though she's
we're both learning Japanese.
yeah, I don't know, I'm really trying really hard not to like get too much into her characterization because I'm afraid it's going to give away
We
how
can
the
save it for
story
next
goes. So
time.
yeah, I guess
I
this
mean,
is a good kind of cliffhanger
I
to leave
feel
off
bad
on.
that yeah, I feel bad even talking about episode 3 to any extent, because I haven't finished the part, and I feel like it would be a more complete podcast if we talked about the whole part. So I feel like we might end up going over a lot of this next time. But
That's a good point. That's a really good point.
yeah,
Oh yeah,
but yeah,
this
I
was fun.
mean,
I feel like we even though we start off really scuffed with no plan. I feel like yeah. I'm gonna start up the ending screen. Right, we're gonna start. What's I'm looking for? We're getting ready to end, right?
Sure. Yeah. I'm getting ready to end here.
All right. Yeah. So I guess I don't know. Do you want to like just discuss your like overall thoughts?
Overall thoughts on part one?
Yeah, or just like the like where your impression as a whole.
I'm interested. I've been consuming a lot of media lately because I've had a little more free time during my workday, enough to consume more media. And so I'm sorry to say that my first choice has not been Bakemonogatari. Continuing that, I will get back on it now that um, we're making this podcast. But I think that's kind of my impression so far. I really liked part one in a lot of ways, and episode three, while I don't think it was weak per se, it was not compelling enough to make me go, oh, I need to see what happens in episode four. So I think that can be a little, not maybe damning, but I don't want to lose momentum on it. I want to keep watching it. I want to keep trying to be attentive through it, because you've talked it up so much. I want to see what you see in it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm excited to see what happens next. I don't have a ton to say yet, but I feel like I will.
Nice. Yeah. I do really like it. Is like I don't. I feel like an anime doesn't come around. An anime like this doesn't come around very often. Just something so different, I guess, is the easiest thing to say. But sorry. I don't know. I think like the most interesting thing about it is just that it's very polarizing. There's so much about it that's like absolutely brilliant, but at the same time, I can't recommend it to everybody. I just can't. I like it's not
you
like
have to have a level of cultural insight to understand it.
Yeah, and that's another thing is that like, and I've heard this from somebody who's bilingual, is that like there is a lot of things that you miss out just from not knowing Japanese.
Well, that's the nature of language. I'm bilingual in English and Spanish.
I'm being more specific though. Like I'm trying to make a point. Like you can
Go
easily
ahead. Sorry,
write
I didn't
that
mean to
off
interrupt
as
you.
anything else,
Right.
but like there is a lot of um, writing and a lot of like clever like wordplay and stuff. That it's very heavy and like in wordplay and like secondary meanings and like combining, things like just the name of the show as a very like small example. It is like you know I mean, like you said, like that's just kind of the nature of language is that you do miss out on stuff like that. But I've heard from multiple bilingual people that Bakemonogatari is a bit, it's more unique in that sense. It's more it's a very specific aspect of it, I guess I would say.
Right, and that's something that's probably totally lost in translation, because the nature. I'm not telling you anything. I'm telling the audience. The nature of Japanese is so fundamentally different from English, but it's also, wordplay is a lot more prevalent because practically everything rhymes, or you can make a lot of words rhyme. The nature of writing, and when a person's name is written out in kanji, in traditional Chinese letters, their name will mean something based on the kanji characters, and that can give you insight as well into the character and who they are. So I think, when you dissect the individual parts of the language, regardless of anime or whatever you consume, you do learn a lot more because language is so informative of how we perceive reality. It's the only mode outside of, it's the only way we can really conceptualize things and express them to each other. And that lends itself to interpretation, that lends itself to symbolism that lends itself to so many aspects, because language is such a powerful thing. And the unfortunate reality is when you do translate anything, you do lose an intrinsic part of what was originally created in
Because
that base
yeah,
language.
I mean, language and culture are built up like simultaneously.
Exactly.
Just as much as, I guess, to like quote like Metal Gear Solid, or I guess Metal Gear Solid quoted somebody else, but language is our homeland. It is our home country. Like
Hmm.
more than like a border or like an island or whatever, wherever you live, a state. It's really like your language that is most like culturally relevant to who you are and who I guess everybody can identify with. Um, it's entwined with each other, culture and language.
Right, and that's very true. And then you look at that, and you examine things like the prevalence of English in the world today. You know, uh, do you know who the second largest English-speaking country is?
Largest as
Second,
in amount of people?
second most second the country with the second most English speakers.
I'd say Africa?
China.
China. Oh, well,
China.
yeah.
And I mean, it's a numbers game because
Yeah,
there's more
I was just
people
going to say
in
that.
the country of China than anything. But there are more English speakers. Think about this. There are more English speakers in China than there are in
England.
Britain.
Yeah.
Yeah, than there are in Ireland, Scotland, Northern Ireland. Than there are in Germany, France, any of the EU countries.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily to say that American culture is taking over in China, but it goes to show how prevalent American culture has become. Because, American style English, and before that, British style English, you can't, diminish the impact of British imperialism either. The prevalence of English is a direct consequence of imperialism, and not just imperialism, but also of just kind of the flattening of the earth and the way that media is shared. And if you go to a foreign country,
The
you'll
ironing
still
of the
see
wrinkles.
right, exactly. If you go to another country, you'll still see a lot of American media.
Yeah. Well, I mean, American. That's and maybe that's maybe one of the biggest aspects is that America has always been the media powerhouse. Nothing has even come close to. I mean, I guess India, like, within itself,
Right.
has a big like film market. Not to like downplay
But
Indian cinema because I fucking love Bollywood movies.
no,
But
no, but I get what you're saying. But Bollywood movies are made for an Indian audience.
Yeah.
American movies aren't really made for an American audience. I think you could say they're made for a Chinese audience in a way. They're really made for everyone.
Yeah.
Like big American, MCU movies, Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, or
It's the reason we got a Pacific Rim too.
exactly, and things that are going to be popular across the board. They're not necessarily going to be like super heavy. They're not necessarily going to have a lot of content in terms of telling a story.
Yeah. Well, it's because we have the industry for it.
What did you say? Can you say that again? I'm sorry.
It's because we have the industry set up for it. Like that's like Hollywood is known everywhere. Like when people talk about American movies, they don't say American movies. They say Hollywood movies. Well, I guess I'm sure some people say American movies, but
yeah, I think it's the context. But I remember when I was studying in Mexico, we went and we saw the remake of Paranormal Activity.
Oh yeah.
No, Poltergeist. I'm sorry, Poltergeist.
I was gonna say
remake of Poltergeist. And it's really bad. The remake of Poltergeist is really, really bad. I think that's like a 2016 movie, 2017.
Yeah.
No, it's before that even, like 2014. But it came to theaters in Mexico, and my mind was kind of blown that day because I went in. I thought it would be like the United States, where it's like a really involved process to localize something, and they dub it, and they put in a lot of effort to like re-edit it. No, They put on the American movie in English with the worst Spanish subtitles I've ever read in my entire life. It was like it was written by somebody who doesn't speak English or Chinese, English or Spanish, trying to translate English into Spanish for subtitles.
Yeah, we can kind of get we can. It's probably not exact because you have like a 1-to-1 kind of thing, but there's been a lot of like movies that become infamous because they're poorly subtitled, like and they're poorly translated, and then they're poorly translated again into English. Like I've seen like a few like Bollywood movies that were like translated into other languages and then translated to English, and like you just get like the weirdest like off the wall, like putting through Google Translate twice, like
that's the Babelfish effect. You translate something through two languages and it becomes nonsensical because you're only really expressing ideas, and ideas get confused so easily when you're talking about more than two languages.
Yeah.
It's really crazy, and that's a reason why I'm hopeful in my professional life. Why I'll Google's not going to figure out a way to translate something from German to English to Spanish or what have you. So at least if the polyglots can keep it up,
Yeah, I mean, there's of course AI that can get closer to a literal like translation, but even then, like the nuance is totally lost.
Right, and I think that's always going to be the issue with automation, is that you're never going to have nuance, and maybe one day. I mean, I think
element.
I think AI is going to be insane one day when we're
AI is already kind of insane. See this image that I have on screen? Are you looking at the stream?
Yes.
This image was like really, really shoddy, like blurry, and I typed in like AI HD, like algorithm, and because it was a simple image, I had a feeling it could do it, and yeah, I turned it into 1080p, and it looks really good.
Yeah, that's sick, man. Like, yeah, it's a really clear image, and it's so cool what AI upscaling is doing these days. And
yeah,
I really, man, if AI upscaling was around when I was really into like pirating anime and things like that, oh man, there's so much good stuff out there that could have been like saved, and I'm not sure if it ever is going to get saved.
Yeah.
Because you have a lot of really bad quality raws of things that have never been translated.
I think the preservation community on the internet is growing more and more, so we might see. I just think everything's gonna try to be touched for the most part. At least like say VHSs, things that are only in VHS, things that are only on film reels, can be digitized, and people are like make entire forums and entire websites that are just dedicated to lost media. In hopes that they can reach out to somebody or find somebody that has said lost media.
Well, I kind of imagine, because this is the only example I can really think of, I kind of imagine an alternate reality where JoJo's Bizarre Adventure never became popular, like globally. Yeah. Which I say that out loud, and I can't believe JoJo's Bizarre Adventure became so incredibly popular.
It is totally wild. I really thought it was... When I was reading it, after you told me, I was just like, I've never heard of this. Like, I've never heard anybody talk about this. Like,
this is like really bad.
This feels really special. This feels like I feel like I have something that nobody else will ever have.
Right, and that's how I felt. Me and Hank JoJo, and I was the first person I ever knew who read JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and I read Part 4 back in the day when there was no real good Part 4 translation, and so this Chinese student uploaded some really poor quality scans, and bless his heart, he translated it from Chinese to English himself, and it was bad. They're called the Duwang.
Pull something up. I can't think of I used to have all the funny memes memorized.
Yeah, they're called the Duwang scans.
The Duwang.
because I guess the Chinese name for Morio, the town in Part 4, is Duang. That's my assumption.
I love that somebody like did a reading of the famous scene where they're in the park.
What a beautiful Duang.
There must be no other place as pretty as this town, Chu. What a beautiful Duang.
Chu. Oh man, it's really magical, and the beauty at the time was that you could read it, and you could read it, you could understand it. It wasn't beautifully written, but you learned how to like rewrite it in your head.
Yeah. And mental gymnastics. You almost train your brain to read it a certain way.
I mean, like, to me, it's a part of my youth that like I just have a lot of fond memories of just like sitting on like one manga and just like consuming so much manga. Like I read so much manga.
Yeah.
And just sitting there and like just poring over JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 4. Even then, it was my favorite part, and it still is. Maybe apart from Part 7. Steel Ball Run, and you know, it doesn't matter that the scan quality is pretty poor. It doesn't matter that the translation is really bad, because it's almost an enhancement. It's almost an enhancement to the experience to get to read the Duang scans back in the day, because they existed.
Yeah, it still has a charm to it. I got it right here. I put it up on the screen. Do you wanna read this for us?
What's wrong, Jotaro?
No, it's nothing. The rain sounds like Josuke. What does that mean?
I must have slept over clock.
I understand that guy must have slept over clock. Like, that guy must have like overslept. He's late. You could see him looking at his watch. But what is the rain sounds like Josuke?
The rain sounds like I need to like look at this for a minute. The rain.
I mean, it is raining.
Sounds like what could they have possibly been trying to express?
Let's see, what's wrong, Jotaro? So something's wrong. It is raining. He's got like
it's raining.
On his head. You can kind of see like the lines that are raining, even with the shitty scan. Josuke's late. The rain sounds like Josuke. Wait.
I wonder if it's supposed to be something more like, yeah, Josuke is late, or the rain's keeping Josuke.
Huh. Sounds like Josuke. No, it's nothing. The rain sounds like Josuke.
Are you there?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
It's nothing. Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay.
The rain sounds like Josuke.
Maybe it needs the context. Maybe.
I'm about to go to like AI mode on this. Just give me a second here.
It's funny you said that, because your audio's glitching out and making you sound like a robot.
Maybe the rain sounds like just the rain. Like take the most like questionable panels from the Duang scans.
I want to
and just trying to make sense of them.
Yeah, I think sounds like Josuke might be a separate thought. Like, sounds like Josuke. He's late. Sounds like something Josuke would do, maybe. But it's a response. It's definitely a response, because he says no, maybe. It's nothing.
There?
Yeah, I think we're cutting out.
Oh, weird. I don't know what's going on. My internet's fine. But yeah, the rain. The rain must be keeping Josuke. It's something like that. I feel like he has to be talking about the rain, but he definitely says Josuke, because they wouldn't translate Josuke some other way.
Yeah.
So the key here is sounds. So yeah. The word sounds is either some kind of idiom, some kind of idiomatic expression,
Yeah.
that doesn't translate directly. So maybe to say the rain sounds like Josuke in Chinese, because remember this is a Chinese scan. The rain sounds like Josuke could be an idiom to say, "Oh, he's late."
Yeah.
Rain is holding him up.
Yeah.
And it doesn't translate, but maybe it sounds better in Chinese.
Yeah, so maybe you could say, like traffic sounds like Josuke, like directly relating Josuke to like why he's late is that it sounds like him.
You know, here's another thought. I just had this. It's nothing, comma. The rain, comma. Sounds like Josuke.
Yeah, I'd said that earlier. Maybe it would cut out.
Oh, okay. Did you?
Yeah.
Maybe you cut out. Because I'm wondering, does that? I'm trying to think. Maybe he just thought he heard him. Maybe it's as simple as that. Maybe he meant to say, "I thought I heard Josuke."
Yeah. I mean, there was wasn't there a scene? The first like enemy stand had to do with water. It could possibly have to do with that. Like that was my first thought. But like at this point, we already are introduced to what's his name? So it's an R.
Rohan.
Yeah, Rohan. We're introduced to Rohan, and this is like way later. So I feel like to make that kind of stretch of the like all the way back to the first like enemy stand we meet.
Yeah, I don't think it's a callback to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. What a mysterious JoJo.
Yeah. What a bizarre world we call an adventure.
Kimyo Naboken.
Are you up to stream? Oh my gosh, we've been talking for almost 2 hours.
Yeah.
Can I convince you to stream stream a game with me?
How long do you think you're going to be streaming? Would you be playing Shenmue?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
How long do you think you're going to stream it?
I mean, you don't need to be there the whole time. Probably like an hour and a half, maybe.
Okay, I mean, I probably won't be on the whole time. I'm happy to at least hang out for a little bit, but yeah. I gotta go to the bathroom first if you want to get it set up.
Yeah, no problem. Alright, I'm gonna have to end the stream, then I'll open it back up.
Cool. Well, let's do an outro in case somebody ever listens to this VOD. Which won't happen. Thank you for listening to the Anime Podcast.
Look forward to our next episode, hopefully. Not hopefully, but definitely.
Definitely, and maybe we should always end with a Duang panel.
Oh, that's a great bit. Yeah, I love
that. and the more confusing, the better, because the longer we can take to like interpret it.
Yeah.
the more we can get out of it.
A nice cool down. I'm sure it'll be less scuffed next time because we'll set it up. I do like the idea of the GIMP setup, or the like multiplayer GIMP setup next time instead of just using like OBS to like bring all the images in.
Yeah, and then that way I can participate too and contribute a little bit more myself.
Yeah, and we can write things down and stuff. That could be fun.
Yeah.
Make lists.
I can finally draw out the flow chart that's going to show you exactly why Rei is best waifu.
Yeah, and then I can make a more reasonable, better argument with why Masada is actually best waifu, but Asuka is.
We should save this for the 1 year special.
We'll save it for 1 year, or maybe episode 100. Also, next time we should probably like record our own. I guess this is maybe behind the scenes sort of stuff, which is I guess maybe perfect for the very end. But let's maybe try to record our own audio so that we can put it together in post, so it's a little bit clearer and you're not coming through Discord.
Yeah, good idea, and we'll figure that out next, and I'll start getting into that. But we're taking it step by step. So if you happen to watch this, if you happen to stick around for the whole thing and get to this point, thanks for watching. Yeah,
and I'll post the VOD on YouTube and then.
Oh yeah.
And then I'll put the audio and put it on like Stitcher or something. For as a podcast.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
I'll just figure that out. Anyway, good night, everybody. Look forward. I'm gonna stream Shenmue in like maybe like 10 minutes after
Yeah,
Hank goes to the bathroom.
it takes me 10 minutes to pee, so
I just wanted to be
I'll
generous.
stream.
I didn't want to. I didn't want to like be like.
If we get 20, if we get 20 followers, I'll stream myself peeing for 10 minutes.
You'll stream your stream.
I'll stream my stream.
Your pee stream. Perfect.
Live stream.
Live streaming.
Good night, everybody.
All right. Good night. Bye.
Bye.